Priya drives a Mercedes C-Class. Not the fully loaded version, but close enough that when she pulls into the office parking lot, people notice. She gets her hair done at a salon that has a Google rating of 4.9 and a booking system that fills up 10 days in advance. Her outfits are never loud, never try hard, just consistently polished in that way that makes people assume her life is running exactly the way it's supposed to. Her apartment is in the kind of neighborhood where the grocery store sells 3 types of oat milk and the coffee costs $6 and nobody questions it. Her social media looks curated without looking like it's trying. Golden hour photos. Clean countertops. A gym bag that costs more than most people's weekly grocery run. From any reasonable outside angle, Priya looks like someone who figured it out early and never looked back. Daniel works 2 floors above her. Same company. Same paycheck deposited on the same Friday every 2 weeks. Same city, same traffic, same cost of living. He drives a 2013 Toyota Corolla with a small scratch above the rear wheel that he noticed once and then never thought about again because the car drives perfectly and he has other things to think about. His work clothes are clean and simple, the kind of rotation where nothing stands out but nothing looks wrong either. He brings his lunch in a container that has been through the dishwasher so many times the brand name on the side is just a faint impression now. His apartment is further from the center, a quieter street, a less recognizable address. His phone is 2 generations behind the current model. His social media is barely active. From the outside, Priya is succeeding. From the outside, Daniel is just keeping pace. Here is what is actually happening beneath that surface. In 5 years, Priya will have approximately $3,200 in her savings account. She will also be carrying $31,000 in credit card balances and personal loans that she manages by making minimum payments and not opening the full statements too carefully. Daniel will have $214,000 sitting in investment accounts, compounding quietly, growing without any drama or announcement. Same salary, same city, same 5 years. A gap of $210,000. And today, I am going to walk you through exactly where that gap came from because it did not come from one big mistake. It did not come from a bad investment or a financial emergency or an unfair circumstance. It came from 10 small, invisible, completely normalized patterns of spending that felt reasonable every single time they happened. These are the 10 hidden costs of looking rich that keep you poor. And by the time we finish going through all 10, you will have a completely different way of seeing every spending decision you make, not just the big ones, but especially the small ones, because the small ones are where the real damage lies. Before we get into the list, I want to give this whole pattern a name. Because naming something is the first step to actually seeing it, and once you can see it clearly, you cannot unsee it, and that is exactly what needs to happen here. I call it the prestige drain. The prestige drain is the money that quietly leaves your account not because something improves your life, not because it brings you genuine comfort or joy or function, but because of how it looks. To other people, or to the version of yourself you are performing for. It is the restaurant you chose over the equally good one 2 blocks away because this one photographs better. It is the gym membership you keep paying for because canceling it feels like publicly admitting something about yourself that you are not ready to admit. It is the jacket you bought for one specific occasion, wore exactly twice, and now feel vaguely guilty about every time you open your closet. It is the phone you upgraded not because yours stopped working, but because yours had been around long enough that keeping it started to feel like a statement you did not want to make. Researchers who study consumer behavior have estimated that the average person spends somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 every year on purchases driven primarily by how those purchases make them appear. Not what those things actually do for their daily life, not how those things serve any real function, but what those things signal. And the part that makes this genuinely dangerous rather than just mildly wasteful is that almost nobody doing it recognizes it while it is happening. It does not feel like vanity. It does not feel like insecurity running through a credit card. It feels like being a normal adult participating in a normal life. That invisibility is the whole mechanism. So let us go through all 10, one at a time, and run the actual numbers each time, because the numbers are the part that moves this from an interesting idea to something that actually changes behavior. The first hidden cost is the vehicle trap, and I am leading with this one because across the average person's financial life, no single category of status spending causes more total damage than the car they choose to drive. And it is so thoroughly normalized that most people have stopped being able to recognize it as a choice at all. Let us slow way down and look at what these numbers actually mean in practice. A Mercedes C-Class, which is genuinely one of the more entry-level options in the premium vehicle segment, there are dozens of more expensive choices people make without blinking. Runs approximately $610 per month in loan payments at a standard financing rate for someone with average to good credit. Insurance on a premium European sedan in most major cities runs around $220 per month, sometimes considerably more depending on your age and driving record. Maintenance on a Mercedes is not inexpensive. These are precisely engineered vehicles, and the parts and service reflect that. So budget around $160 per month when you average out oil changes, scheduled service, and the occasional unplanned repair. Add those three numbers together, and you are sitting at $990 per month. That is the real monthly cost of having that vehicle in your life. Now compare it to a reliable used Toyota Corolla, fully paid off, zero monthly loan payment. Insurance on a practical used sedan in the same city runs around $85 per month. Maintenance on a Toyota is famously manageable. These cars are built to run for a very long time with minimal drama, so call it $55 per month to be generous. You are at $140 per month total. The gap between those two vehicles is $850 every single month. That is $10,200 every year. If instead of absorbing that gap into a car payment, you invested it consistently at a 7% annual return, a conservative figure based on long-term market averages, over just 5 years, you would have accumulated approximately $61,000. $61,000. That is the financial weight of the assumptions people make when they see you pull into the parking lot. And most of those people are also overspending on their own vehicles, which means they are not thinking about you anywhere near as carefully as you imagine. The second hidden cost is the wardrobe premium, and this one is particularly skilled at disguising itself because it speaks the language of practicality. People who spend serious money on clothing almost always frame it the same way: I am investing in quality pieces that will last. And to be fair, that logic is sometimes genuinely correct. A well-constructed item that you wear constantly for years absolutely justifies a higher price. But that is not the majority of what is happening in most people's closets, and if you are honest with yourself, you already know that. The only intellectually honest way to evaluate any clothing purchase is something called cost per wear. The formula is simple. Take what you paid and divide it by the number of times you have actually worn it. A $120 blouse bought for a specific event, worn 4 times, and then quietly retired to the back of the closet costs $30 per wear. A $40 shirt from a clearance rack that you reach for twice a week for 2 years costs less than 20 cents per wear. Which one was the smarter investment? Research on clothing habits consistently finds that the average person spends around $1,900 per year on clothing, and a very significant portion of that, in some surveys more than a third, goes toward items worn fewer than 5 times. The average closet contains somewhere between 100 and 200 items. The average person regularly wears somewhere between 25 and 40 of them. The gap between those two numbers is not a storage problem. It is a spending problem wearing the costume of a storage problem. The third hidden cost is what I call status dining, and this one is interesting because it is so completely disguised as a normal and healthy social life that pointing it out feels almost antisocial. Eating out is not the problem. Eating out specifically, at least partly, to be seen in a certain kind of place, to generate a certain kind of image, even if only in your own head, that is a different category of spending entirely. And it costs a specific and calculable amount of money. There is a pattern that a lot of people in their 20s and 30s fall into where the restaurant choice is not primarily about the food. It is about the neighborhood, the lighting, the kind of crowd that goes there, the story it tells about the kind of person who eats there. A dinner for 2 at this category of restaurant averages around $95, including drinks and a tip that feels socially appropriate. A genuinely good home-cooked meal for 2 costs somewhere around $9. The gap per occasion is $86. If this is happening twice a week, and for socially active people in cities, twice a week is actually a conservative estimate. You are spending over $8,900 a year specifically on the experience of being in spaces that align with the image you are maintaining. That is not a food budget. That is an appearance budget that happens to involve food. The fourth hidden cost is the subscription graveyard, and this one is invisible almost entirely by design. The subscriptions you maintain not because you use them and they bring you real value, but because canceling them would feel like a downgrade, like letting go of a version of yourself you still want to believe you are. The premium streaming platform for the prestige dramas you keep meaning to watch, but have not actually opened in 3 months. The upscale gym with the eucalyptus towels and the juice bar you visit maybe once a month and feel guilty about every other week. The meditation app. The language learning app you opened with genuine enthusiasm in January and have not touched since February. The audiobook service. The upgraded cloud storage. The productivity tool you paid for, used twice, and forgot existed. Studies on subscription spending have found that the average person pays approximately $240 per month across all active subscriptions and is actively using somewhere around 40% of them, which means roughly $144 per month, $1,728 per year, is leaving your bank account to maintain memberships that are doing nothing for your life except existing. Over 10 years, that money properly invested would be approaching $25,000 for apps you open once a quarter at most. The fifth hidden cost is the upgrade cycle, and by now this one has been discussed so many times in personal finance content that bringing it up almost feels obligatory. But people still do it. Every year. In enormous numbers. Which means the conversation is not actually landing the way it should, which means we are probably not looking at it from the right angle. A new flagship smartphone costs around $1,300. The phone you are holding right now, the one that is a year old, maybe 2, makes calls, sends messages, takes photographs that are, in any honest side-by-side comparison, functionally identical to the photos the newest model takes for any real use case you actually have. The processor is marginally faster in benchmark tests designed specifically to highlight that difference. The camera has a new feature you will use a handful of times and then forget exists. The battery lasts slightly longer. None of these things are changing the quality of your daily life in any meaningful way. What the new phone is actually doing is signaling something. It says you are current. It says you are keeping up. It says, in the quiet language that objects carry, that you are doing well enough to replace things before they break. If instead of upgrading every year you extended your cycle to every 3 years and invested the difference consistently over 20 years, that single habit change compounds into approximately $72,000. From one habit. 1. The sixth hidden cost is the address premium, and this is the one where people push back hardest because we have collectively built an entire cultural framework around the idea that where you live is a direct and legitimate reflection of where you are in life. More than almost any other spending decision, your address carries social weight. The right neighborhood, the right building, the right amount of space. These things communicate something in a way that is deeply embedded in how we talk and think about adult success, which is exactly why overspending on housing is one of the most expensive and least examined things people do. The address premium I am talking about is the gap between what you actually need for your daily comfort and functional life and what you are paying to live in a way that matches a certain image. An extra bedroom that functions as a storage room and a home office you use 2 mornings a week. A neighborhood premium that adds $350 to your monthly rent because of the reputation of the area, not because of any meaningful difference in your actual day-to-day experience of living there. Every extra $250 per month in housing costs that is driven by appearance rather than function translates to $3,000 a year leaving your account. Over 10 years invested, that approaches $42,000. And for a significant number of people, the real gap between what they need and what they are paying is considerably larger than $250 a month. The seventh hidden cost is gift inflation, and it is the most socially coercive cost on this entire list because the pressure is not internal. It is not coming from your own ambition or your own desire to impress. It is coming from other people, from social expectations that have been quietly escalating for years, from the creeping feeling that showing up with a smaller gift than the person beside you says something about you that you do not want said. Weddings, birthdays, baby showers, holiday exchanges, graduations, housewarmings, the expected spending on gifts in most social circles has increased significantly over the last decade, and almost nobody discusses this openly. Which means the pressure operates entirely underground. People spend money they genuinely do not have on gifts for people who are also spending money they do not have, in a reciprocal performance that benefits almost no one and leaves nearly everyone quietly poorer. The average person spends around $1,600 per year on gifts. A meaningful portion of that is not driven by generosity or genuine desire to celebrate someone. It is driven by the anxiety of not wanting to look cheap. Not wanting to be the person who gave the smaller thing. The person receiving the gift, in almost every case, would genuinely rather you be financially stable than receive a more expensive present. But the performance overrides the rational consideration every single time. The eighth hidden cost is the grooming and beauty tax, and I want to be precise about what I am and am not saying here, because this one gets misread more than any other point on this list. Taking care of your appearance has real value. It affects how you carry yourself, how you feel in rooms, how you move through the world. None of that is what I am pointing at. What I am pointing at is the specific portion of beauty and grooming spending that exists entirely for external consumption, the treatments, products, and appointments you would quietly drop if you knew with absolute certainty that nobody whose opinion matters to you would ever notice the difference. The manicure that is genuinely about how you feel versus the one that is about what your hands look like in photos. The $50 serum that works versus the $180 serum that has better packaging and a name people recognize at dinner parties. The haircut at the expensive place where the stylist remembers your name versus the equally good haircut at the place that does not have an Instagram aesthetic. None of these distinctions require you to become someone who stops caring about their appearance. The question is simply this. If nobody could see it, would you still do it? The answer that is genuinely yes, that is real self-care. The answer that honestly might be no, that is the prestige drain, and it costs more than the individual line items suggest when you add them across a full year. The ninth hidden cost is the social obligation trap, and this might be the most emotionally complicated one to sit with because it is dressed up as friendship and community and being present in your own life. Every brunch you attended mostly because declining felt socially complicated. Every group trip that required you to quietly check your account balance before saying yes. Every concert ticket you bought because the group chat was moving fast and opting out felt like opting out of something larger. Every birthday dinner reservation at a restaurant that cost twice what the food was worth because it was the kind of place the occasion apparently required. Each one individually looks like a perfectly reasonable social decision. Together, they form a pattern of spending that is quietly dismantling the financial progress of millions of people who consider themselves engaged, generous, and present. People in their 20s and 30s who are socially active in mid to large cities are frequently spending $3,500 or more per year on social activities, and a significant portion of those activities are ones they attended because the social cost of declining felt higher than the financial cost of going. Learning to be genuinely selective, not antisocial, not withholding, just honest with yourself about what you actually want versus what you feel pressured to want, is one of the highest return behavioral changes available to most people in their prime earning years. The relationships that require you to overspend to maintain them are costing you in more ways than just the money. And the 10th cost is the one that reframes everything that came before it. This is opportunity cost, and it is not simply another item sitting alongside the other 9. It is the multiplier that takes a collection of moderately poor financial habits and transforms them into something genuinely life-altering over time. Every dollar you spend on the prestige drain is not merely a dollar spent. It is a dollar that will never become the compounded version of itself that consistent investing would have created. That is an abstract statement, and abstract statements do not move people, so let us make it concrete. Take $16,000 a year. That is a realistic annual total for someone who has a moderate version of several of the habits we just went through, not the extreme version of each one, just a realistic version of a handful of them combined. $16,000 a year invested at 7% annual returns over 20 years does not become $320,000. It does not become $400,000. It becomes $670,000. $670,000. That is the actual, mathematically real price of the prestige drain. That is what Priya is paying. Not the $31,000 in debt she can sort of see when she forces herself to look at it directly. The $670,000 in future financial freedom that she is silently trading away, one completely reasonable seeming purchase at a time, to maintain an image that most of the people observing it are not thinking about anywhere near as carefully as she imagines. So, what do you actually do? Not theoretically. Not what a perfectly disciplined person with no social life and no emotions would do. What do you do, practically, starting right now, given that you are a real person with real social pressures and a real history with these habits? This week, one thing only. Go through your last 30 days of bank and credit card statements and put a small mark next to every purchase where any part of the decision was driven by how it would look to someone else or to the version of yourself you are performing for. You do not need a spreadsheet. You need honesty. At the end of that exercise, add up everything you marked. Write that number down somewhere you will actually see it. Not to feel bad about yourself, because that number is real, and real numbers change behavior in a way that vague general awareness never does. This month, every time you are about to make a purchase, pause for 10 seconds and ask yourself one direct question. Is any part of this decision driven by how it will appear? The answer does not automatically mean stop. It means be honest about what you are actually buying and why. Track every purchase where the answer is yes for 30 consecutive days. At the end of that month, you will have a number. That number is your personal monthly prestige drain. It will almost certainly surprise you. This quarter, take half of that monthly number and set up an automatic transfer into an investment account on the same day your paycheck arrives. Not a manual transfer you make when you remember and feel motivated. An automatic one that happens before the money has a chance to become something else. The automation matters because it removes the decision from the territory of willpower, which is unreliable and exhausting, and places it into the territory of systems, which quietly work whether you are thinking about them or not. Here is where Priya and Daniel are 10 years out from where we started. Priya is still working, still performing. The Mercedes got replaced with a newer one when the lease ended because stepping back to something more practical felt, in that specific moment, like publicly going backward. And she had mentioned the car enough times in enough conversations that reversing felt complicated in ways she could not fully explain even to herself. She still looks, from any outside angle, exactly like someone who has it together. Her savings account still does not match that image. Daniel is 46 years old. His investment accounts have reached the point where continuing to work is a genuine choice rather than a financial requirement. Not in the sense that money is no longer something he thinks about, but in the sense that no single employer or client holds the kind of power over his life that comes from financial dependence. He does not own anything impressive. He does not wear anything that makes people ask where it is from. He has a comfortable home, a reliable car, and enough invested that other people's opinions about his lifestyle carry exactly zero weight because they carry exactly zero power. He travels when he decides to travel. He declines invitations without constructing elaborate explanations. He does not spend any measurable portion of his mental energy maintaining a performance for an audience that was never watching him as carefully as he feared. That is what financial freedom actually looks like in practice. It does not look like what you see on Instagram. It is not a more impressive address or a newer car or a wardrobe that makes people ask who you are wearing. It looks like options. It looks like the ability to say no without a reason. It looks like waking up on a Monday morning knowing that if something in your life needed to change, you would have the resources to change it. The genuinely wealthy people you have actually encountered in real life, not on social media, not in advertising, not in the aspirational content you consume, but in the actual texture of your actual day-to-day life, almost never look the part. They drove ordinary cars. They wore comfortable clothes that nobody commented on. They were relaxed in a way that had nothing to do with performance, because they had nothing to perform. And the people you know who always look the most impressive, always somewhere worth photographing, always driving something new, always keeping up in every visible category. A significant number of them are carrying a level of financial stress that their curated image would give you absolutely no indication of. You get to choose which of those two people you become. And that choice is made almost entirely in the small, invisible, completely undramatic moments when nobody is watching, when there is nothing to perform. When it is just you and your actual financial situation and the quiet daily accumulation of either habits that build real freedom or habits that consume it one reasonable seeming purchase at a time. If something in this video shifted the way you actually see your spending, not just confirmed something you already knew, but genuinely moved something, subscribe. Every week I go deep on one money psychology topic. Not tips and tricks. Not budgeting hacks. The actual mental patterns underneath financial behavior, because that is where the real change happens and that is the only place it ever starts. I will see you next week.